Oh my God, boys and girls. Doing it again. On StreamYard, it says, "Are you ready to go live?" I'm never ready for this shit. But I have to account for a few things that happened yesterday. I need some better software because this bullshit StreamYard going out sharing a screen is irritating the hell out of me. Doesn't exactly work out. Anyway, so yesterday we had, I did like 3 videos early in the morning: the weather report, James' tour on smoke and mirrors, and Anthony Pudding Brains Maurice, where I explained some of the stuff about abiogenesis. Now, if I had some better software, some skills in this, I could do a much better job of explaining what exactly the research in abiogenesis is about. But there was that. And then Smokey Saint had a couple of inconsequential, irrelevant things. Let's see. I got an interesting paper that I linked in academia. Academia, I normally get stuff on from Strawson on mind-body problem, consciousness, papers like that, and realism. That's kind of what I'm signed up to. For some damn reason, they send me towards an extended fundamental kinds of hypothesis of biblical creationism. And there's a very, very strange little article here, which is not very long. And at the end of it, there's this interesting little bit. I mean, that's it. And it's pretty much bullshit. And I'm not sure why it ended up even in my stream. But at the end of it, there's a link to this Wolverine SoundCloud where he does some synthesizer music with genetic algorithms. And I haven't looked any further into it than that because I haven't had the time. But boy, I wish somebody would look into this shit and figure out why I got this paper. Now, let's see. Over on Standing for Praise That I Am, had a bunch of irrelevant streams about, I'm not sure what he's doing, flat earth debates or some damn thing. Standing for Truth put up the evolution part of the discussion where he tried to railroad me into talking to Otangelo, and he clipped out just the pertinent part with ptango101 and David P. Neff. And I think those two kind of tore these other guys apart, but of course they don't know that or don't realize it. So, and gee, I hope I'm not muted again. No, I don't think so. If somebody notices, please let me know. Oh, what do we got here? Anyway, so this is worth checking out. And this was, now I told Standing for Truth I didn't want to debate, and I didn't want to go on his goddamn shit show of a channel. And that's kind of what it turned out to be here. This is sort of a shit show, even though ptango101 and David P. Neff really did a good job here. Worth checking out. We will be looking into this a little further, but I did not want to talk to Otangelo in that manner. So Otangelo and I are having a discussion tomorrow morning, hopefully at around 10 or 11 a.m. Central Time. And we have that. And then we did Saturday Night at the Atheist last night. And on Saturday Night at the Atheist, Otangelo dropped in and he showed us a great deal of his blog. And I went ahead and bookmarked all of the papers that he references, and kind of I'm going through some of that. And there are some very interesting. Well, the discussion was interesting in a couple of ways. Maybe, hopefully, I'll get around to that. I want to talk about intuition a little bit at the end of this and see if I can make any sense. If I had some damn tools, it would be better. But then NephilimFree had a discussion last night that went for 4 hours and 20 minutes, and ptango101 and did I call him Ptangelo? It's hard. Otangelo, ptango. Amazing, these two people popped up in the last week on my radar at the same time. ptango101 was on here for, I think, about 3 hours talking to this Bradka who doesn't seem to have a clue, and Nephilim who doesn't seem to have a clue. And they came up with, well, Nephilim had this little bit about the second law of thermodynamics and entropy, and creationists just flat out do not get this. Now, the interesting thing is I got a book yesterday, and I'm going to try to read this book today because it's kind of worth it. It's called The Demon and the Machine, and it talks about the second law and a number of other things. See, it's by Paul Davies, The Hidden Webs of Information in Life. And he does a really good job of explaining for the layman information and the second law of thermodynamics, how it applies to life. And he makes some clarifications on what life is exactly and how it ties in with information. Pretty wonderful book. I think everyone should own this thing, and I think it's pretty inexpensive. And what else do we have? I wanted to just display this picture because if you want to learn about abiogenesis, this is my short stack, basically. And if you clip that, you can see the authors and on most of them. Origins of Life on Earth. I can't remember who that's by. But anyway, these are pretty worthwhile reading. And I would start with The Vital Question by Nick Lane. Go to Emergence of Life. And from there on, it's, anything. Bonner is really good on development. I read that one. And these are worthwhile books if you really want to understand abiogenesis or get some ideas about how it all happened. So anyway, this Nephilim thing popped up with the second law, and I'm gonna try to listen to this and get a little more information. So now Otangelo, started out pretty strong with some stuff on some kind of confusing stuff on morphogenesis and the embryo development of an embryo in multicellular life. And I don't think I have that. Oh, I want to mention Steve Ballman did a classic rock sandstone video. Steve Ballman is always good, and I linked him. In Nephilim's stream, he mentioned a paper, and the link didn't work, and then he fixed it. And so this is the link to the paper. I'm hoping that you can see this. Yeah, let's see if we can expand it a little bit and get down to, whoa, what is this stuff? I don't know what's happening. Okay, so it is this paper here, or not a paper, it's an article. It's from Oregon State University. Can't even find the author. Something about birds, and it's from 2009, but it's a Nephi point that you might want to look at. So we have that. What else? What else is happening? Oh, our Saturday night at the Atheist last night, where we had Otangelo, and he started out strong with embryology and morphogenesis, and I kept my mouth shut because I want to talk to him tomorrow about the flaws and what he was saying. And then he kind of went on a bit of a gallop, and I had to at one point stop him because we were starting to cover too many things and run back and forth across the 4.2 billion year long football field with the goalposts, from no life to prebiotic life to what we have today. The thing is, my observation of that is that, they put out all these talking points and they go so far, like, I don't know. I could share my screen here for a minute. Oh, I wanted to show you one other thing before I quit sharing my screen. This crude little picture here is mama raccoon and her two babies. I don't know if you can see them back there on my fence, trying to figure out how to get into my fence. And that's what I'm dealing with pretty much every time I do a live stream. So I just wanted to point that out so you understand what I'm up against here with these little intelligent evolving critters in my backyard. And he's staring at what I did when I wired up this cat fence, which is like a fence with a roof for my cats out in the backyard. He's staring at how I wired it to screws in the back of the window here so that they couldn't get in. And I'm pretty sure he's got a plan. We'll figure out what that is tonight. Unfortunately, we'll figure out what that is tonight. And let's see. Okay, so the human mind works well enough to keep us away from bears and help us find food and help us figure out what we have to do to survive. And we have sort of an intuitive calculator that works with our limbic system with emotions, and it works with something called somatic markers. You could look that up on the Wikipedia. You'll find information from Antonio Damasio. He's one of the consciousness researchers that had quite a few books in the past 20 years. But he talks about somatic markers. So basically, you get an idea or you hear something, you get some piece of information about the world, and you make a little marker in your brain. And a somatic marker is kind of a collusion of this limbic system, your emotional brain, which is like a lawn sprinkler, and it marks, like the more emotional something is in your brain, the more marked it will become and the more the neurons fire. And as they fire, they change the neuron so that it's more likely to fire again. And that becomes a marker. And that combines with information from your frontal cortex, your visual cortex, all across your brain. So you have this little marker of something that made sense, right? Some little piece of information, like a creationist will, Standing for Truth is a remarkable example. He'll throw out these little tiny tidbits, 1, 2, 3. He'll show papers. Every one of them gives you one of these somatic emotional markers. And of course, your brain is not a supercomputer and you are not God. So you're not capable of digging in and understanding in depth or researching in depth every one of these markers. So you have to move on. So you have all these little nuggets sitting in your brain, and then you make what an intuitive decision. Now, intuition is kind of like a calculator that takes all these markers and tells you which way to jump. You know, if you see, like, you catch something out of the left side of your eye, and you remember that there's a big, like, chasm over there that you shouldn't step into, or a mud puddle, and there's something, a bird flies, you know, up here, and you got another marker for that, and you make the intuitive decision to jump right. And after you've jumped right, all of these somatic markers get taken down. They end up a little bit in long-term memory. You'll remember a little bit of them, but for the most part, you're done. You have made an intuitive choice. You have jumped to the right instead of the left. And now in the future, when you run into the same situation, you will tend to jump to the right, even if there isn't a chasm on the left, even if there isn't a bird up here, or, you know, a weird noise to your left, you will tend to go to the right because of that memory. And that is what we call a belief. So we develop our beliefs based on these kind of shitty little markers, you know. And what we try to do, or what I try to do, is take each of these markers and try to become aware of them. It's sort of a Zen thing, where you become aware of a marker and you look into where you got that marker, what the reality is behind it. Because it may turn out that thing to the left that was a noise was just a tree that happened, like a quaking aspen that happened to make a weird noise. And you have to look into the reality of each of these things. And in that process, you can take down a belief. You can take it down, or you can fortify it if you find that it's reasonable. All of these little nuggets that added up to this intuition, then you can strengthen that belief. And now that belief is much more powerful because you have much more reasoning behind it. But if you don't have any reasoning behind it, or it doesn't make any sense, or somebody else does what they call a rebuttal, a fucking word I hate, then perhaps you should change your belief. And it's always good to try to reflect inward when you believe something and say, why do I believe that? Like, I had an experience. I was a hippie conservative. I've always been a polar opposite of myself, but I ended up being a conservative Republican for many years, particularly in the 80s. And I had like these ideas about immigration and how I was going to do this and do that, and I listened to Rush Limbaugh. And then at some point I started asking myself, well, why do I believe that? When was the last time I actually had an immigrant attack me or take my job or, steal my rake or whatever? And it's like, never. It's like, well, somehow media inspired this fear of immigrants in me, and it became a somatic marker, and it ended up being a part of a belief which had no basis in reality at all. And one by one, I took down those conservative beliefs, and I've been sliding way to the left ever since. Just taking a look at each one of them, like the thing with statues, pulling down statues of the leaders from the South, who I kind of, respected because they were powerful military leaders and all of that stuff. And then they pull down the statues, and I'm like, oh shit, we're losing that piece of art. We're losing that piece of our culture. And this was like a couple of years ago when that stuff started. And then recently with the George Floyd thing, we were pulling down 1 million statues, right? So, or not 1 million, but a lot of them anyway. And I started looking at it and thinking, when was the last fucking time I looked at a statue or give a shit about a statue or ever encountered a statue? I mean, these were just ideas that I heard from the media. And it was things like, oh, we shouldn't be pulling down the art. And then I heard that there were a whole lot of people that were just horribly offended by it. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, you know what? Take them down. I think if I were Trump right now, what I would do is send the military out to tear the goddamn statues down, just get it done with, because nobody really gives a shit. I don't give a shit. So why was I upset about it? Well, media triggered a little idea, put a somatic marker in my brain, got another somatic marker over here, my fear of political correctness or my dislike of it. And all these things added up into a belief. And but then when I started analyzing them one by one, I'm like, I don't really give a fuck. So the belief is no longer there, and I live in peace over statues being pulled down. I really don't give a shit one way or the other. Just get her done with. Anyway, so creationists, when they do the Gish Gallop, will put down these little intuitive seeds. And when you listen to them, like if you listen to Raw Matter or SFT go on, and you're kind of like you're not really in a great cognitive place where you can analyze everything or look up everything as they go along. And it's just boom, boom, boom. Like SFT is like ShamWow salesman, ShamWow. He just one thing after another. And you listen to it and it's like, holy shit, these guys, they have really some good points. I got to look into that. One by one, you look at the papers and you find out that they don't have anything to do with what this asshole is saying. And none of them make any sense. And then at the end of that, your impression of his performance is 180 degrees from what it was. So anyway, I encourage everybody to to take a look at every belief. Like if you believe in evolution or abiogenesis, ask yourself why, and start looking into what's behind those little somatic markers that add up to an intuition. Let's see, Otangelo tomorrow. I don't know how that's going to go. I'm hoping we can kind of keep it on task. I'm planning on either talking about, what were the two things I was going to talk about? Embryology, or else he mentioned dualism. God, if we get into a conversation about the mind and consciousness and dualism, that is going to take us hours. So I think we'll hit embryology, and maybe we'll have some further conversations about dualism and why I just go in. I hate dualism. Fuck dualism. I also hate idealism, philosophical or metaphysical idealism. So anyway, I hope the hell I wasn't muted during this. I look pretty fucking silly. Nobody's commented. Nobody's watching. Nobody cares. Anyway, bye guys. See you tomorrow for Otangelo. And I'll probably might do a weather report tomorrow depending on what's going on. Beware of the raccoons.